Soon after we moved here, we learned that there was a state park, a battlefield, 15 miles north of us. It sounded like a good place for a picnic. It was, and is. Dade Battlefield State Historic Site, 40 acres of live oaks and pine, was set about with picnic tables, a tennis court. In front of a small museum was a concrete replica of a log barricade, 3 feet high, 60 feet on a side. According to a pamphlet, 2 companies of American soldiers, led by Major Francis Langren Dade, had been ambushed there by Seminole Indians in the winter of 1835. At the end of a day-long battle, only 2 soldiers survived and made their way back to safety at a place called Fort Brooke on Tampa Bay. I wondered why the soldiers had come here. 100 enlisted men, 8 officers, marching through the Florida wilderness. Why had the Indians attacked? I asked for a book. There were none, only the pamphlet. I wanted to know more. We were in the land business. I knew nothing of research, but I began to write letters to libraries, historical societies, the National Archives. 5 years later, I had gathered a good many letters, orders, maps, pictures. Many of my questions had been answered. The destruction of Dade's command, I learned, had made news across the country. The hue and cry had been raised. $30 million appropriated. More than 60,000 men, regular army, navy, and militia, had been sent into jungle warfare against 7,000 men, women, and children of the Seminole Nation. Hundreds of forts were built, 3,000 miles of roads cleared through the wilderness. After 6 years and 7 months of war, 1,500 soldiers were dead. All but 300 of the surviving Seminoles had traveled the Trail of Tears to far Oklahoma. No longer shielded by the Indians, black Seminoles, escaped slaves who had joined the Indians, were finally taken or returned to slavery. My quest had produced enough material relating to the battle to fill several boxes. What to do with it? Store it away? Let those men, soldiers, Seminoles, and slaves slip back into obscurity? No. Their story should be told. Those men, women, and children, red, black, and white, should not have been forgotten. I would tell their story. I titled it Massacre. It was published in 1968. But research is a habit difficult to break. The letters, the phone calls, trips continued, and like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle, more information came in. The picture became more complete. Somehow, another 27 years passed. I had learned more about every aspect of the battle. I understood more the causes, the results. I wrote another book, this one titled Dade's Last Command. Over the course of years, I had found much information concerning the officers and men of Dade's command. But one man, Private Ransom Clark, one of the 2 soldier survivors of the battle, stood out from the rest. I had discovered that Clark had been the only survivor of 6 soldiers whose boat had capsized in Mobile Bay. 10 months later, in Dade's battle, he claimed to have received multiple wounds, including a broken arm, a shattered thigh, a bullet in one lung. Was that possible? The record was clear that he had been in the battle, had made it back to Fort Brooke. But with such wounds, was his story true or an extravagant fiction? I knew that after the battle, Clark had been given a small pension, had returned to his hometown, Griggsville, New York, had married, fathered a daughter. From the office of the Livingston County Historian in New York, I learned that he had died in 1840, was buried in the local cemetery. An attorney friend in New York was able to obtain an exhumation order, and with Dale Ann, our then 2 small daughters, Amy and Jody, our son Chris, my brother Marsh, we flew north. We rented a car, drove to the town. At the hardware store, we bought a pick and shovel. It was December. The temperature was 28 degrees. Digging carefully through the frozen earth, we found his bones in perfect order. We carried them across the street to a neighbor's heated garage and reassembled them on a sheet of plywood resting on 2 sawhorses. Dr. Emir Javahari, a pathologist we had hired, did the examination, bone by bone, from Clark's skull to his toes, the doctor's photographer at his side clicking away. Clark had, in fact, received every brutal wound he had claimed. All had healed except his right shoulder, the shattered bones still sharp. Infection had finally ended what the Seminoles had begun. We returned him to his grave, but I could not let him go. What could have so driven a man that he alone would survive a shipwreck? Be one of only 2 survivors of a battle that took the lives of 106 others? If a story needed to be told, it was his. I gathered my bones of fact, clothed them with flesh of fiction, and did my best to explain that, in my opinion, only one thing could have so driven him: his love for Eunice Luceba French. I called his story Nobody's Hero. It recounts Clark's life from birth to his miraculous arrival at Fort Brooke. I was flattered that several of our children actually read the book. The children and others asked, but what happened to him after that? Did he make it back home? Did Lucy wait for him? In order to answer those questions, to complete the story of this remarkable man, I'm writing a sequel to Nobody's Hero. The working title is Somebody's Hero.